Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the continuing misinformation that large sections of the national media are perpetuating about the lorry driver shortage, as Nando's becomes the latest chain to make clear that Brexit is crippling our supply chain, but that's not how media outlets are presenting it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So after KFC announced that certain lines were going to have to be dropped while supply problems persist, which they will for a while at this rate, Nando's has now said that it will be closing some of its restaurants, about 50 out of 400, and use the staff to help out suppliers to get things moving, as it was reported they put it. Interestingly, however, for those still thinking this is essentially down to the pandemic, consider a couple of points. First of all, this statement from Nando's applies to Britain only. They have restaurants in Ireland, both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. They're fine. No closures there. They even said that explicitly. It wasn't just that they said, oh, you know, this is affecting our stores in England, Scotland and Wales, which they did. Specifically, it's not a problem in Ireland. Secondly, and this is a real test of whether people are paying attention, I suppose. See, look at this headline in the Daily Star. Now, the Daily Star, for those who don't know, is not really a newspaper in the real sense. It's really less about the news and more an adult comic. It's like the Beano for people who can't be bothered with real news. As well as saying Nando's has run out of chicken, they say pubs are left with no beer as more HGV drivers isolate. It's absolute nonsense. It was always nonsense. Those in the haulage industry tell us that the shortages are down to EU drivers leaving and not returning, and not being able to return in most cases because of our new Brexit immigration policy. They also said that most lorry drivers don't even use the app for fear of being pinged. So although there have been a lot of workers being told to isolate as a result of the app in general around the country, and that's a problem with a soaring infection rate, not the app itself. This didn't apply to haulage. But you'd have to know what the industry are saying to have known that. And this is not what the mainstream media were mostly reporting. But you wouldn't be stupid to have believed it. It sort of makes logical sense. But being honest, you would now have to be a bit clueless to believe it now, because the Pingdemic doesn't even exist. The rules changed this week. If you've been double vaccinated, then you don't need to isolate if you've been in close contact with a person infected with COVID. Over 60% of the population have now been double vaccinated. Now, that will still mean lots of young people, the vast majority of whom who will not have had the chance to be double vaccinated. Yes, they can still be pinged. They can still be told to isolate. There will, of course, be certain sectors of our economy that employ a lot of young people, like pubs, like restaurants, who will still be hit by this. But not haulage. As of a few years ago, the average age of a UK lorry driver was 53. And it said that less than 2% of drivers were under the age of 25. Given the trajectory of the industry, this will only have gotten worse since. Basically, lorry drivers don't use the app, and the few who do, they don't need to isolate anyway if pinged. As far as haulage is concerned, there is no Pingdemic. And if you're talking about the possibility of lorry drivers who won't have elected to get themselves vaccinated, just because they could have been vaccinated, there's some people who choose not to. Does that sound like the sort of person who would also download the app? Absolute tosh. The last time I rubbished the notion that the Pingdemic was to blame for the collapse in supply chain, which it never was, I did actually wonder to myself aloud, what are the media going to try and do once the rules change? Once there's no Pingdemic, what are they going to blame it on then? Turns out they consider their readers and viewers to be so thick that they're just going to carry on with the same line. But like I always say, the first step to solving a problem is to face up to that problem. You have to acknowledge it. Because the Pingdemic is only one factor in any issue with our problems. And it's not even the major factor. And right now, as of this week, it's a much smaller factor. We're not going to solve our problems by applying solutions to only the lesser factor. Bear in mind there are no empty shells being photographed in other European countries who also have the pandemic looming large. France is getting quite a few new cases per day. Not as many as us. They're on just under 24,000 new cases per day on average. We're on 29,000. But we've had empty shelves going back weeks now. All I'm being told from people in France is, it's fine. And I don't need individual anecdotal accounts. The media tells its own story. National and local media outlets throughout Britain are reporting on shortages, some more severe than others. Actually, where I am is not that bad. You see empty shelves. It's not as bad as some I've seen. Many are failing in their duty to accurately report the reasons for those shortages, but they are reporting the fact of them. And in all sorts of media, not just left-wing or right, all over, all of it. Even the very hard pro-Brexit media like the Express is reporting them. Nothing in the media outside Britain. Nothing, not a sausage. But that's because they've got lots of sausages on their shelves. And that is because there's nothing for them to report. It's not the pandemic. This latest thing with Nando's. Oh, we're going to have to shut some stores in England, Scotland and Wales. Oh, that's just Britain. What about Northern Ireland? That's part of the UK. No, we haven't got a problem there. Why is that then? Because Brexit's not hitting them. They've got access to the single market, you see. And sure, you can say that there are workers in warehouses or shops that are occasionally losing staff to COVID. Again, lots of young people working there, either due to the infection or the instruction to isolate still. But that is also happening outside Britain, but without the same impact, because that's the thing. The same pandemic pressures exist outside of Britain. The impact is not, because it's Brexit. It's obviously Brexit. But the supply chain industry leaders also tell us it's Brexit. And there were warnings about this a long time ago. I talked months ago about how we weren't going to be able to cope this summer. With the easing of lockdown, more people wanting to travel and eat out, and with Brexit shortages, of course we were going to see empty shelves and restaurants who couldn't actually deliver their menus. And I've got no great insight. I just listen to those who do. I knew about this a long time ago. That means the government did too. Unless this is another case similar to Dominic Raab lounging on a beach in Cyprus as Kabul fell and then claiming I had no idea what was going on. Have we got a government full of ministers who never read any of the briefs that their officials supply them with? I mean, we all know Boris Johnson doesn't keep himself informed. And I had a dim view of the rest of the cabinet anyway. But are they all like this? And here's the thing. Either the government knew that these shortages were coming ahead of time, or they didn't. If they didn't, then they're incompetent. They're deliberately ignoring what their officials are saying and will continue to do so because their officials knew. And that means they won't act to solve this problem. But if they did know, let's say they did know about this in advance, they say, oh, yes. Then that means they accepted it because they did nothing about it. They did nothing to avert it. It means they accepted it and they believe they can afford the consequences politically, which still means they don't intend to do anything about it. Now, surely there has to come a point where inaction becomes too politically expensive for them, where they have to do something. But the problem really is twofold here. First of all, while they aren't actually doing anything to address the real problem, the major impact, the impact of that problem will only get worse. The supply chain will continue to fail because although businesses are trying hard to plug the gaps, they can only do so much. Wages have increased. Some drivers have been tempted back, but it isn't solving the problem. It's easing it, alleviating some of it. It's also creating problems elsewhere because some councils are now finding it difficult to offer their refuse collection services as it should be, which is a problem due to their drivers leaving to drive HGVs in the supply chain. Eases the problem in one place, creates another somewhere else. So every time you have stores that spend some money and go, right, we're going to get enough drivers now, we'll be fine. It's taking those drivers from somewhere else in the supply chain very often. But the second issue is that the longer they leave this, the harder it becomes to deal with it. If you were to install a sensible government tomorrow, they wouldn't have the problem fixed by the weekend. Just like it took time for the impacts to be felt, it also takes time to fix it when you start applying the right solutions, even if you did that straight away. And we also have limited solutions right now. We can't just train up a load of lorry drivers, even if the government put its financial muscle behind it, which they're not doing. That's a long-term solution. It's one that needs addressing, but that's a long-term solution. It doesn't help us now. We've got empty shelves now. We need more drivers. We need them now. And if we can't train tens of thousands overnight, which we can't, then we need to get ones that already exist. That means from overseas. The government seem to hate Europeans, so we'll probably get them from India or something. Should be interesting given the rather different rules of the road there. But they will have to get them from somewhere, because there aren't enough in Britain. Yes, there will be some who are qualified and left the industry because it's rubbish pay for rubbish work, and you increase the pay and improve the conditions and you can tempt more back, but we still don't have enough. You know, Brexit is a national policy designed to shrink our economy, and it will. We will eventually adjust to having access to a smaller workforce and less access to the supplies we've taken for granted. But that period of adjustment is going to be painful. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.